afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the latest in the GeoTalks Express series. Delighted to have you with us in this summer afternoon. I know a lot of you are thinking about other things during the summer, but we're delighted you took some time out from your summer activities to join us for this hour-long presentation. As you can see on the screen, today's presentation is going to focus on kind of a different application for Global Mapper. We're going to take a look at, as you see, a Global Mapper extension at work. We're going to take a little look at the SDK, Global Mapper Software Development Kit, and specifically we're going to be looking at a specific application of this that was developed by a company called Datum. I am joined today, I'm delighted to be joined today by Steve Hamilton. Steve, how are you this afternoon?
Doing well, David. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, Steve, I believe you're in Denver. Am I correct?
That's correct. Right out here and along the Front Range.
Excellent. So technically, it is also good afternoon to you as well. I know folks are joining us from various parts of the world, so good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever is appropriate. Now, Steve, we're delighted you're with us. Steve is going to be on deck for most of the presentation, sharing a little bit about the company, what the company does, and specifically talking about how they use the Global Mapper extension. Indeed, a couple of our extensions are being used by Datum. Hopefully, you'll reveal a little bit of the kind of other uses they have for Blue Marble's extensions. Before we get started, as is typical, I know many of you have been through these sessions before, a little bit of housekeeping before we get rolling here. The webinar format, as you're well aware, you're in listen-only mode, which means you can hear us, we can't hear you. You will not have the ability to ask questions verbally. However, over on the right side of your screen, you'll see a questions panel. I know many of you have been with us before. You love to ask those questions. Please do that again today. Go ahead and ask any questions that are relevant, and we will try to answer as many of those as we can during the session. I may have to interrupt Steve every once in a while, hopefully he's not too offended, to have some questions answered that are appropriate for what he's showing us. If some of those questions are a little more technical in nature, we may take those offline and follow up with you directly. We have a record of which questions are asked and by whom, and so we can contact you directly if you want some more information, either on the SDK and how the SDK works, which is a little bit more of a technical subject than we're going to be dealing with in detail today, or indeed some of the work that Datum are doing. We will make sure you get the appropriate information by way of follow-up. The session is being recorded, so if you want to recap and revisit some of the themes we talk about today, you can look for an email. Hopefully within the next couple of days, you will get a link to the uploaded version of that. And I know many of you are actually watching the recording of this right now. If you are one of those people, and again, if you have a question, unfortunately, the live question is not an option, but we will provide some information towards the end of our presentation, and indeed in the description right down below. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll get some contact information there as well, and you can ask us whatever questions are appropriate. We have planned a few more sessions. We're looking towards the end of the year, and it's only July, but we're already looking towards the end of the year, and we're trying to fill in some of our dates. So I'm going to share a few of the upcoming GeoTalks Express sessions that are coming down the pike. This one's an exciting one for me personally, because we kind of shoehorned this one into our schedule. It's not something that we originally had planned. We have recognized or are designating the month of August to be academic month. We're going to be spending the entire month focusing on the use of our software in colleges and universities. Now, as a kickoff to that, we're going to have a quick webinar August 4th. We're going to share a little bit about how you, as a teacher, if there are any teachers or educators in the audience, how you can use Global Mapper in a classroom. There is also going to be a workshop the following week, August 11th. We have a free workshop. Again, if you're thinking of incorporating Global Mapper into a teaching environment, you may want to sign up for that. Information about this is on our website. The webinar, the GeoTalk session will be August 4th, but we have a lot of other events coming up during the month. I can't believe it's almost release time already. Version 23 of Global Mapper is going to be released in September. Before release, and this is kind of a new approach this year, we're going to have a preliminary get-together to discuss what's coming up. Now, why we're doing it this year is because the Global Mapper platform is changing completely. Many of you I know are using the LiDAR module. You use it with your point cloud data. the LiDAR module is going to morph into a completely new application called Global Mapper Pro, and there's going to be additional professional grade functionality added in there. This is a big change. It's probably the most significant change in the platform since the product was first developed. So we want to make sure you're aware of what's coming. We have a little Q&A session coming up end of August where you'll find out about what the plans are, and you can again ask questions. I think we're going to have some special guests in that session as well. Rumor has it that Mike Childs might even be in the audience. So if that's not reason enough to sign up, I don't know what is. So that coming up towards the end of August. September, as I mentioned, is release time. We're going to have our typical what's new, a hands-on demonstration of the capabilities, some of the new tools in version 23. The following week, I believe that's 1 week later, we'll introduce formally Global Mapper Pro. That is the name that we have assigned. Global Mapper Pro, our professional grade version of Global Mapper. Information, sign up information, you'll see on the website noted at the bottom of the screen. There are additional webinars that have been planned. I didn't have room on this slide, but you'll see those listed there as well. We'll introduce these as we go through each month. We'll introduce the ones that are coming. We have some training next week. In fact, we have a training class, and I've noticed even today in my inbox we're getting a few late signups. So there is some room in there. July 26th to 30th. These are afternoon sessions next week. That's East Coast time afternoon. That would be morning for you folks on the West Coast, a little bit later in the evening for those of you maybe in Europe. But we have some room available. Our Global Mapper class is next week. Our LiDAR module class follows the week after. Again, space is available. If you want to sign up, again, website is noted here on the screen. We have planned some classes between now and the end of the year. I didn't have a chance to incorporate those into my slide. End of September, I believe, beginning of November. Dates have been penciled in. I believe it's being uploaded to our website as I speak. So hopefully that information will be there if you go to the website. We'll have some more information about that in our next session. Okay, back to today. The agenda. This is a simple one. I'm going to begin by introducing the SDK at a very high level. I'm not going to get into anything technical. Just for those of you who are Global Mapper users, what exactly is the SDK? Is it something I should be interested in? Should I be paying attention? Well, obviously, by virtue of the fact that you're here, something you're interested in, I'm going to explain a little bit about what it is. I'm going to hand over to Steve fairly early in the presentation, and as I said before, he's going to drive most of this. I'm going to give an opportunity to introduce the company. You know, what do they do? What's your business? Who are your customers? All of those good things are going to be covered, I hope. And then specifically, we're going to have him give us a demonstration of how their application, Summit Evolution and Global Mapper, work together. It's fascinating. Again, for those of you who use Global Mapper, you're going to see a completely different use case for the software that you're familiar with working in tandem with another application. So we'll get there in just a few minutes. So as noted, my first bullet here, the Global Mapper SDK. What are we talking about here? Software development kit. Well, I was jotting down some notes here to try to describe exactly how to approach this for an audience that's maybe not used to this idea of a software development kit. And the analogy I came up with is a mechanic, okay? Work with me on this one. A mechanic looks at an engine, looks at a car, looks at a machine and says, you know what, I can make this better. I can add this component or modify this component and make it suit the needs that I have. In a way, an SDK provides the same opportunity. A lot of folks, you look at Global Mapper and while yes, it's fun to play with the tools within the context of the interface, they say, you know what, that would work well in my application, or I would like to change the software in some way to add a new function or add a new button or have it talk directly to my application. We'll see that example in a second. So in a sense, the SDK is like an engine. And it's an engine that can be modified. Now, as you'll see in a second, there's a couple of different ways that can happen. But as you'll see in my slide here, it's a powerful set of tools that allow anybody building software, creating software, to apply all of those fun tools that you use in the software, but in a third-party context. A little bit of technical specifications here. Those of you who are developers, it is technically a Windows DLL, compatible with most programming languages, C++, Visual Basic, C#, etc. It will work with whatever programming language you're using. You basically integrate the components that you need. And indeed, for many applications of the SDK, the end result is invisible to the user. You may actually have used the Global Mapper SDK on a third-party application and not even been aware of it. It's nicely tucked into that other application. The other way that the SDK works is through the creation of custom functionality within Global Mapper itself. And again, we're going to take a look at that in just a few minutes. This is what I just referred to. I should pay attention to my slides. The required elements can be integrated into a third-party application or used to create extensions which enhance the capability of Global Mapper. Now, I'm not sure if Steve is actually going to cover this in his presentation. I want to show you very quickly. I want to switch to the Global Mapper interface very quickly here. For those of you who are software developers, this is how you can integrate a custom extension into the application. I'm just simply going to the Help menu, and I'm going to go to the License Manager. Now, many of you I know have been here before. When you license Global Mapper, you license the LiDAR module, you'll see the checkboxes, I'm all good to go. But you'll also notice here we have a couple of extensions noted here. There are two that are included in the installation of Global Mapper by default, the Ridge Generation Data Maintenance Extension and the Coast extension. Coast is I have my notes and I forget what it stands for. It's a tool for assessing the impact of flooding or coastal intrusion, coastal flooding processes into a local community, not only from a physical point of view, but also from a financial point of view. So we have a couple of extensions that are shipped with Global Mapper. You can see now how they are integrated into the application. I'm not going to enable these right now. We'll see Steve's extension enabled in just a minute. But as you can see, if you develop your own extension, it's simply a case of adding that right here. Now, one other window to bring up here very quickly, just Windows Explorer from off screen. I'm just going to drag this into view. This is the program files folder that was installed in my program files for Global Mapper when I installed the software. And you'll notice the Bridge extension and the Coast extension are both listed here. If you're a software developer, this gives you something to take a look at. I'm not going to go any deeper into this, but if you want to see how these extensions work, we have a couple that are shipped with the product, GMX files, technically Global Mapper extension files, and you can take a look at the structure and see how this could be used maybe in your context or for your situation. So again, that's as far as I'm going to go with the technical aspects of the SDK. Suffice to say that it allows you to either to integrate Global Mapper into a third-party application invisibly or to modify the present installation of Global Mapper. You may have noticed in some of our communication, piggybacking on the release of our desktop software, we also released a version of the SDK. In other words, the SDK is current with the installation of the software. If we add new functionality to Global Mapper 23, for instance, we will have an update to the SDK to reflect that. Now, currently, we also have a LiDAR module SDK. If you're interested in point cloud processing, there is a separate SDK for the LiDAR module. That will again change when we adjust our platform going forward from version 23 and beyond. Licensing is an issue. I think I've already had one question about the licensing of the SDK. Let me go ahead and address that one. Again, without getting into too much detail, depending on how you anticipate using the SDK, whether it's for an internal process within your organization to make some custom software for your internal data management, that's one level of license. If your intention is to distribute the product you create as a commercial product, obviously there's a different licensing mechanism. I'm not going to, again, get into the specifics, but if you have questions in that regard, I do encourage you to get in touch with us. I'll give you some contact information at the end, and you can see what's appropriate for you. Final thing to note here, I think I mentioned this a few minutes ago, but it is worth noting that our other applications also have SDK, specifically Geographic Calculator. Geographic Calculator has an SDK called GeoCalc, which allows you to embed the geodetic tools that are the foundation of that product, again, into a third-party application. And if I'm not mistaken, Steve, you actually use that SDK as well in some of your software. Hopefully we'll have a chance to see that one in just a second. That, again, by way of introduction, let's, as my slide notes here, take a look at the Global Mapper SDK in action. Now, Steve and I have been practicing this transition. Hopefully it will work well. Steve, I'm going to hand the screen over to you.
All right.
Hopefully you can take it from there.
And hopefully you're seeing.
I think I'm seeing your presentation view, Steve. I don't know if you want to try to share the other monitor, your slideshow monitor, if that's an option. I could take the screen back and we can try this one more time if that would work.
Yeah, I thought I had that down.
Well, let's take two here. I'm going to take the screen back very quickly, and you will get the message once again. to share the screen, just go ahead and make sure that the slideshow screen is the one that's being shared.
That's flashing.
There we go. I did say we'd been practicing. We didn't. Yeah, we go. That's perfect. Okay.
There we go. And we're where we should be. Before we get started, I'd like to thank David and the entire crew at Blue Marble for inviting us to present. We're thrilled to be part of the webinar series that they offer, and we've enjoyed working with Blue Marble over the years. And as David mentioned or alluded to, we have two extensions that work with Blue Marble that I'll be showing that we're very happy to have included, and I'll show you the what we're doing with that. I'm with Datum Systems. I'm in the technical support section, and we specialize in software for stereophotogrammetric compilation. We have software to make maps, and we have several modules that go along with that that extend the capabilities of that into LiDAR. We look at satellite imagery and so forth. But basically, we started out business as putting encoders and a digital interface into older analog and analytic machines that were used to use film diapositives. And you'd look through an optical train to see stereo by looking at one image with one eye and the other image with the other eye, and orienting the two diapositives or transparencies in such a way that you could see stereo, and then compile a map from there to collect the information that you're interested in, roads, buildings, etc. That eventually morphed into more and more digital development to where we arrived at Summit Evolution, which is a fully digital soft copy workstation system. It's highly configurable. It's been refined over the years. We started in '87 and we've been improving it ever since. So it's a very stable mapping platform at this point, and we continue to add capability to it based on client request, or if there's a technical issue that they want addressed that someone has with a particular mapping issue, we'll take a look at it, and if we can add the code in to address that request or issue, then we'll certainly do that. And we get enough of those as we go along. We issue once that fix is made, we issue a beta release for evaluation by the requesting client, and then that's available to everyone that's under support to download the beta and use it if they find that that tool is useful. And then that's eventually all of those incremental improvements that we do to the software are included into an official version release. So, what's the big deal about stereo 3D viewing? For those that haven't been in a stereo mapping environment, what this does is allow mapping in all three axes, X, Y, and Z, both horizontal mapping to get a position of where an object is. But with our software, you can also record and map how tall an object is or how deep an object is. And that's the point of our whole software set, is to allow mapping in X, Y, Z so that you can build a complete GIS system for managing whatever asset or whatever type features that you're mapping. It could be forestry, it could be wetlands management, watershed management, urban development, urban management, even down to the point of street furniture inventory management for street signs, stop signs, speed limit signs, manhole covers, water valve covers, and so forth. That's an ongoing activity with most city and county governments, and they tend to pay attention to that. So they like to map those kind of features into their GIS for active management as well. So that's what we do. That's what we specialize in. Just to give you an idea of what a stereo pair is, for those who aren't familiar, it's two images that have an overlap. So there's a left image and a right image, and there's enough overlap between the two that you can see a common view of the ground between the two of them. Once they're oriented correctly in relationship to each other, and for mapping purposes, situated in a coordinate system, some type of mapping system that you can then start to retrieve relevant data from, you can display this on screen, and this is basically what it looks like. And you're thinking, well, it's blue true color and red. What's that all about? This is anaglyph. This is something that I really wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, but for a webinar series, it's the only way we can show how stereo works. With a regular conventional stereo viewing system, you would be wearing a set of glasses, either passive, polarized, or an active shutter set of glasses, which a lot of people are familiar with, and we'll see those here in a second. But this is basically an anaglyph stereo pair on screen, and if you happen to have a set of glasses handy at your workstation that you're viewing this webinar at, and they're red and cyan, you could put them in and you'd be seeing this scene in 3D right now. So again, not the greatest viewing system, but what we have available for today. Here's a close-up. You can see that the fort, this is an old Civil War fort in Nashville, Tennessee. You can also see there's a baseball stadium, and there's quite a bit of divergence between the two images, the cyan lines and the red lines. If I were to converge this model using the Z wheel on the on my input device, I could make the cursor float down onto the ground at whatever I point. I have that cursor hovering over the green, this green target right in the middle of your screen is my 3D cursor. Right now I have the model converged so that the fort at its elevation is properly converged, and I could map the features, the points, and the walls of this fort from this view. If I wanted to map the stadium, I would drop my cursor down onto this surface and start mapping from there. That's the 3D aspect. There's quite a bit that goes into photogrammetry and 3D mapping. It's not just, hey, I've got two pictures and I can look at them on screen. There's a whole lot behind it. There's a lot of mathematics. There's a lot of coordinates. There's a lot of geodesy. So these are some of the viewing systems. This is a representation of a couple of the input systems. You use this, you put your hands on this. That's the Z wheel that I mentioned right here. And then these buttons can be programmed to do certain things: digitize points, reset, pan left and right, zoom in and out, that kind of thing. So you never have to take your hands off of this cursor for more efficient mapping. These glasses are shutter glasses with an emitter. This kind of system is being phased out. NVIDIA is the main manufacturer for this kind of viewing system, and they're moved away from frame sequential, which is what we use to display on a screen like this, an LCD screen. So there are other, display systems coming into play, like a two-screen system with a beam splitter mirror. This system right here is glassless. It displays two images, and it's very nice to look at, but it's not cheap either. But these are some of the tools that we use. Today, these are the tools we'd have to be using if you want to see 3D in my little green and red glasses down here. The datum photogrammetry.
Sorry, Steve,
yes.
I did promise I would interrupt when questions came in.
Sure.
With apologies. We had someone just ask the question. Danielle just asked, what kind of hardware would you require for stereo analysis on a PC? Maybe going back to the previous slide might help with the answer, specifically on a PC.
These all link into a PC. I'm on a laptop right now that I use as a stereo workstation. So I have a set of glasses that go with my larger, this type of screen right here. And I can look at this with my glasses, these glasses right here, and map in stereo 3D with this. Otherwise, with the proper video card and a PC workstation, you can hook any one of these other viewing systems up and have 3D display on board on a desktop PC, or if you have a big enough, enough memory, decent enough processor, and a decent video card in a laptop, you can certainly use that as a mapping workstation as well.
So in terms of hardware, really the hardware, the minimum requirement is literally glasses, the 3D glasses.
Well, glasses and a viewing system. You've got, because you're going to be using a set of passive polarized glasses to view this system, but you need an active shutter set of glasses to view this system, and no glasses at all here. If you take a look down here at the bottom, datum.com/configurations, we have some suggestions on the type of hardware that you could take a look at. Basically, we'll look for a PC that's got a large enough power supply, enough memory on board, enough RAM to support operations with Summit Evolution, and a fast disk drive for faster transition. So that's all in the configuration section if you want to take a look at that.
Yeah,
but,
we had a couple of questions specifically on that. Somebody asked a video card with 4 gig of memory, question mark. I assume that's a question, 4 gig of memory in it.
I've got a P4000 an NVIDIA P4000 in my laptop, and and it's got 4 gig as well at this point, and that's working perfectly well for everything that I'm trying to do.
Okay.
So again, configurations has some suggestions, and if we wanted to take it offline, we could talk specific video cards. Basically, it's got to be a frame sequential support. OpenGL is what we're looking for in the video cards. So something like a GeForce gaming card isn't generally going to work. So we are back in some of the Quadro P4000 series cards, 5000s. But we can take a look at that offline, or take a look at it datum.com configurations to get an idea of what's usable and works well.
Yeah, and some of those questions that are coming in specific to the requirements, I will make sure that Steve gets those, so he can contact you directly offline to get you some more specific information. Thank you, Steve.
Sure, you bet. We take inputs from a variety of systems. We use aerial imagery, a conventional aircraft with a conventional mapping camera mounted up, or a push broom ADS 100 or 80 sensor. UAV imagery has been coming on strong in the last couple of years, and we've adapted Summit to address the particulars of dealing with UAV imagery. LiDAR and point cloud data, if you're flying a LiDAR system, we have landscape to take that in, or you can use the tools available in Global Mapper to address that as well. And satellite imagery, as long as you've got an RPC, a rational polynomial coefficient image set, and what that is an image from a satellite that has basically an XYZ, a position over the world, and an omega phi kappa of the attitude of the sensor when it took that particular scene. Then we can use that information to orient two satellite scenes together to view stereo at that point. Non-RPC satellite imagery or satellite sensors are a different matter. And I've never really dealt with any, but I think we can take some in with some work. But the main thing we focus on is RPC supported satellite imagery. We also talk to third-party modules, PCI Geomatica, Trimble, Blue Marble, and all the UAS processing systems to get inputs into Summit Evolution. From there, we can come out to Contour Creator, which is a specialized contour generation package to make published contours. Ortho and Mosaic for generating ortho photos and then mosaicing those images together. And then we talk to 4 main vector editors, or CAD systems is what we call them, and Global Mapper is what we're focusing on today. And then from there, once you've gone through and you're in a CAD system and you're collecting and editing vectors in there, that gets saved out to a database for delivery to your client or for use at your own offices or whatever. As I mentioned, this is continually evolving. Summit Evolution is always changing based on the requests and whatever new technologies come along. 10 years ago, we didn't have drone capability. Now we do, and it's doing pretty well. LiDAR has been coming on strong over the past few years. So, as the technology and the availability of new data sources comes along, we adapt to fit. There's 3 levels of Summit. I'll get through this pretty quickly. There's Pro, Feature Collection, and Light, and it's just how it sounds. Light's the low-cost system for basic editing. It's got some limitations on what kind of input systems you can use, like a system mouse instead of one of those 3D cursors that we saw in the earlier slide. Feature Collection is designed for a production shop that is just doing vector collection. They've already got oriented imagery coming into them from a vendor or from another department in their shop, and they don't need to have the capabilities that are built into Pro. Pro has orthorectification, orientation, airfield 3D, which is a specialized mapping module for mapping airfields in the United States. There's several other things that are built into Pro that separate it from the other 2, and the price changes accordingly. But those are the 3 levels, so you can get what fits your needs without having to just, buy the one-size-fits-all approach. We've got just under 6,000 licenses around the world in a variety of applications or uses. We've got clients throughout the world. We also have a global distribution network. Our main office is up in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm down here in Denver, Colorado, near the middle of the United States. And then we've got distributors throughout the world to support and train and sell our software. These are some of our national mapping organizations that we've installed Summit at and that is currently in use. U.S. Forest Service, the Ordnance Survey over in the United Kingdom, Saudi Aramco, several mapping, well, multiples you can see. We won't spend a lot of time on this, but we've got a lot of licenses in that for national mapping operations around the world. These are our technology partners, and this doesn't mean these are the folks that we sell their software, hardware, et cetera, and they sell ours. These are the people that we actually team up with to take advantage of what they have to offer. We try not to reinvent the wheel. We focus on what we do best, and what we do best is create a comprehensive, easy to use, highly configurable stereo soft copy workstation with adjunct tools that help get the job done. We don't do analytical triangulation, which is figuring out the position and orientation of each photo in a flight. We don't post-process UAV drone data. We don't come up with city modeling software of our own. We depend on other companies to do that, and they don't, in turn, generally, build their own stereoplotter software. So we all work together and we all work very cooperatively. And a case in point in that today is Blue Marble Geographics. We depend heavily on Blue Marble for the Geographic Calculator, and we love this tool, and so do our clients. This is a tool within Blue Marble that allows us to set and change and transform our coordinate systems being used for the current mapping project. So the imagery we saw earlier was in Nashville, Tennessee. That's Nashville, Tennessee State Plane, US survey feet. That's the system it's set up in, and that's based on a certain projection, certain coordinate system origin, and so forth. Blue Marble helps us to define all that. And then, even better, is if I've got a client, in this case, then another project that's coming up here shortly, it's over in Germany, it's the DHDN coordinate system, meter units are meters. But let's say I've got a client who demands that his data be delivered to him in Universal Transverse Mercator. In this case, it would be UTM zone 32 in meters. We use Blue Marble's Geographic Calculator, GeoCalc extension, to set the output coordinate system, the vertical system, the transform that needs to be used to move it from one coordinate system to another in order to provide the precision and accuracy that's required to get our data on the ground properly in that destination coordinate system. And all I have to do is click this button in Summit, and it applies that transformation, and the project is then being mapped. This may have been the input of my control and the airborne GPS and so forth that was used to create the project, but this is what I'm going to be outputting and delivering to my client just by clicking that button. We love it, our clients love it, and it's a heck of a tool. We license this extension from Blue Marble and incorporate that directly into Summit so that it's a painless and seamless transition to pull up and set this system. If you're wondering, this little input right here is mostly for the North American datum coordinate systems. This is our horizontal time-dependent processing, HTDP processing capability. There's models out there that track the movement of the plates that all of our continents are sitting on, and you can move. This would be a whole different webinar to get really right into it, but we can account for the movement of those plates over time and provide even more precision to our output mapping product. Yeah. And a case in point for this would be California is moving north, so many millimeters per year, and we can model that with this capability. You were going to say?
Sorry, there was one question come in. I will answer very quickly. Someone had asked if the use of this tool within Summit Evolution requires a license of Geographic Calculator because it is a standalone application? The answer to that is no. The GeoCalc extension has been integrated, or the transformation process has been integrated into the application. So you're using a different interface to initiate the same processes that you would within our software, but there's no license required for you personally to access this functionality. That's the question. Hopefully that answered. Comment just in terms of the HTTP, Steve, just worth noting for those who are in North America, we are going to be updating our reference frameworks. It was scheduled for 22. It's not going to happen. I don't know what the latest schedule is, but they will be natively time dependent as well. So as well as defining an input-output system, you'll define a date, basically, because that will obviously be determined, will be able to determine a more precise location based on where a point was at a particular moment in time. So very appropriate for those of us here in North America. While I have the mic here, Steve, one question came in a few minutes ago, and I apologies for the person who asked it. I did not have a chance to ask this one. Maybe this is something we'll get to a little bit later. Maybe it can be brought up in the context of your demo. But the question is, what is the benefit of mapping in stereo 3D versus photogrammetry 3D model imagery to digitize? Maybe we'll just let that one hover for the time being, and you can bring that up when you actually show us Summit Evolution.
Okay, yeah, I think I can cover that. If not, perhaps that requester can restate the question or interrupt again at that point.
Sure.
Jump in with right then and see if we've answered the question. Let's see, I think I've covered GeoCalc. Yeah, we love this tool, and so do our clients. So, and like David said, no charge. It's built into Summit, so it's built into the cost of Summit Evolution. If Blue Marble makes a change with their models, their geoid models, their coordinate transforms, anything like that, we get a new refresh of the libraries, and we incorporate those into Summit, and then we would release that as part of a new release or as a beta as need be to make that new coordinate system or a new transform available to a client that was needing it. And that happens every now and then.
Frequently.
Yeah.
Things change a lot. Things change a lot.
Change. Yeah, Geodesy is and that's what Blue Marble does, is Geodesy, studying and mathematically modeling the shape of the Earth and trying to add more definition, more precision, more accuracy to everything. And they do a great job with it. But the geodetic models are always changing, and there's always new updates. So yeah, this isn't a static tool that's going to be good for 5 years from now. It's going to be continually changing as we go along. What's new? Summit Evolution version 8 is going to be released in early August. Terrain Project is an internal module or an internal processing structure within Summit, and that's been developed to incorporate an octree data structure, much faster access to data such as point data, LiDAR data, image data, pixels. Just enhances our processing and data management capability quite a bit. We've got some enhanced LiDAR image creation and mapping capabilities so that we can create imagery out of LiDAR and then map from that LiDAR data within Summit. Filters for managing stereo model creation. This became an issue with UAV drone imagery. You've got a drone flying along and it's creating, hundreds, thousands of images, and it's collecting as it's going around turns. It's doing 90% forward, 90% side lap, where you've got a heavy amount of side lap between flight lines and along a flight line. And you don't want to make stereo models out of all that. You'd be spending the rest of your life trying to map each one of them. So you can selectively set up how you want your stereo models to be generated for exploitation in Summit. You don't want to make models, that are coming out of imagery that was collected during a turn at the end of a flight line, or the models from an adjacent flight line. You want to keep it within a flight line and go flight line to flight line. So we have additional filters for that now. And we can also use a previous project as a template. If you're doing a lot of mapping for a client in a certain coordinate system, you don't have to set it up every time you come into a new project. You can just carry that template forward and it's all set up for you. So it's just a little bit of ease of use. So enough about Summit and enough about Datum. Let's talk about Summit Evolution, Datum Capture, and Global Mapper. This is where we get into how Summit actually talks to Global Mapper and what the benefit and what the action is that's going on with that. The whole idea is to digitize 3D vector information without having to translate or transform anything. So we're going to go directly from stereo imagery, 3D stereo, directly into Global Mapper using Global Mapper native tools. We're not using Summit tools. We're not using our own little interpretation of how Global Mapper draws a line. We're actually using Global Mapper tool itself to draw a line. We built a toolbar a few years ago, and that's been used in Global Mapper. This is a close-up of the toolbar here, and it's got a lot of functionality to it. I'll talk about that in just a second, but it's the easy way to get into using Global Mapper. It just resides up here in your main toolbar set. So Global Mapper screen, Summit Evolution screen, we've got imagery being displayed on both. We have a little trick to what we're doing, and I'll talk about that right here. The toolbar is calling a variety of tools. This is the datum setup. This is our setup for superimposition. Well, what's superimposition? That's where we digitize, or we click a button over on the Summit stereo screen. That click is sent over to, that digitized point is sent over to Global Mapper. Global Mapper records that as an input to its whatever drawing tool is being called, and it displays that point on screen. That point on the Global Mapper screen is being called back over to Summit Evolution as a superimposition. It's not being digitized within Summit Evolution. It's digitized within Global Mapper and showing up in the screen in Summit Evolution so that the compiler can keep track of where he's been, where he needs to go, what's going on, and that it's correctly he's correctly collecting the data that he's intending to collect. So a variety of tools. Superimposition update is SI update is just a refresh of the screen. This button with a hand with the button here is our button manager, so we can go in and assign certain functions to those buttons that were on that 3D cursor that we looked at in one of the earlier screens. Editing tools for Global Mapper, drawing tools for Global Mapper. These are spot elevation. You know, there's just several things that are being called here. This one's kind of important. This is the enable, disable the Summit cursor. And the Summit cursor is basically giving Global Mapper a heads up that, hey, you should be watching for and accepting any data clicks from the Summit Evolution screen. If you disable this, Global Mapper won't take any input. So you enable this, and that turns on the recording or the watching part of Global Mapper to be collecting data. This is our keypad. This is an interface that's similar to the toolbar. It has mini and extra tools that are on the toolbar are available here. And you can program each one of these little cubes or squares to do additional functionality depending on what your needs are. You know, you want to digitize just a road, an arterial road. That's all you're interested in. You can have a button here that selects and sets up for arterial road, and I'll show you what that encompasses here in just a second. But this is a very nice interface between Summit and Global Mapper to easily and efficiently select functionality as you want. This can be loaded up onto, you can display it on screen as part of one of your screen displays in your workstation, or you can put it onto an Android tablet, touchpad tablet, and Bluetooth that into your workstation, and then just have it sitting there so it's not taking up screen resources. A couple of things I wanted to do here. Let me do this. I wanted to show this. David had brought this up earlier, but there's the extension that's showing for Blue Marble Geographics. So that's showing that it's active and operating in the Global Mapper environment, and that we have everything going from on a licensing viewpoint. So this is an active extension that's running and working now. We have also, to enable this, we have something called an admin tool, which you bring up, and there's a CAD enabler. This can turn on and off CAD. So we can disable Global Mapper, or we can set it to capture, and that means that it will actively be working with Summit. So this is how we invoke Global Mapper or enable it to get going. And then we've got these two working together. And what do we mean by that? Well, I've got a canned little animation here because the live demo was way too slow for a webinar. But let me just show you what we're talking about in terms of digitizing. We would go across, and in a compilation environment, we'd select the drawing tool, we'd select what it is that we're wanting, a 3D line, want to come in and select the feature that we want it to be, so an alley or a driveway, hit OK. You notice that down here in the lower left of the summit window, a green command statement came up telling you what's happening. And here I'm moving my Z wheel to converge the model. So at that point, that green crosshair is actually sitting on the ground in the 3D view. And if you were wearing the anaglyph glasses, you'd be seeing 3D, the buildings would be standing up, the cars would be, you know, different from the pavement below them, and you'd see trees coming up at you and telephone poles and so forth. But here as I'm going along, I'm continually moving my Z wheel to keep that cursor on the ground because it's gently sloping terrain around this area. Excuse me. And so I've collected an alley and a road there, or one part of it. But now I want to go back and do arterial roads. So we're basically calling the same command. So this is more hard pavement, and any compiler worth the salt would zoom in and even farther than this to get the precision that they need to where they're actually capturing the difference, the interface between the traveled way and the sidewalk curb. And that's all part of photogrammetric mapping, is getting the data precisely enough to support accurate in-field operations. Like when someone has to come out and dig a hole to fix a water main, they want to know where stuff is. And that's where the precision and accuracy comes in. So here I'm just digitizing, running down the sidewalk, or the valley pan rather, or the edge of the traveled way, and collecting one edge of a road. And it's showing up over in the global mapper side. It's showing up in the summit side through superimposition. And we've collected a data feature. So now we're going to do a 3D line again, but this time I'm going to say a closed area feature. Going to do a building roof because the ground of a building is very difficult to see from aerial imagery. You can usually see one or two sides of a building, but not all four from an overhead image. And yes, we can do some mapping from panoramic imagery or from oblique imagery, but the most precision is gained from overhead nadir view imagery, where you're looking basically straight down at the surface of the earth as you're flying along. So here we're just, for simplicity's sake, I'm just doing a portion of this building. But it's building in the global mapper side as we go along, and it's displaying in the summit side to show me that I've captured that building. Now, what else do I need to do? Well, at this point, I'd go looking for another willing victim, and I'd find one. I'd converge my model, get my cursor up onto the roof line of that building, and then start digitizing again. So that's the basic function between Summit Evolution and Global Mapper. It's a means of digitizing directly into a native environment with no translation, no DXF or DWGs or DXF files, no DGN files or shape files or anything like that that have to be translated over into something that Global Mapper really likes. Even though Global Mapper reads and writes everything, it's great. This puts it right into a global mapper environment. Same thing is true with the other CAD systems. So it just depends on what capture you're using and what CAD system you're using.
Yeah, the question came in. I'll just grab this one again, Steve. Someone asked, obviously familiar with the LiDAR modules pixels to points tool. This is the tool for photogrammetrically analyzing overlapping drone images for the purpose of creating point cloud and ortho image and 3D model. Someone asked, does the pixels to points tool also allow natively working with stereo pairs? And the easy answer is no, that's not what that's configured for. That tool obviously requires overlap of images, so the underlying technology is similar, but you cannot work with stereo pairs in the pixels to points tool in Global Mapper. There's a little bit of an kind of a elaboration on the question that was asked previously, Steve. Question was originally, what's the benefit of mapping in stereo 3D as opposed to photogrammetric analyzing your 3D model, etc. to digitize? Follow-up says the question mainly revolves around why they would use this software instead of photogrammetric application. I don't know if you want to cite any of the benefits of this platform as opposed to maybe some alternatives.
Well, this is a photogrammetric stereo mapping application. This is stereo photogrammetry. Summit Evolution is doing just that. It's not just a stereo 3D displayer that lets you do something. These tools that we've built into Summit allow you to do every aspect of a photogrammetric exploitation of an image of a stereo model. So I'm not sure if I've misled and made you think that we've got some specialized, just simple viewer, and it leads to letting you put stuff into Global Mapper. Summit Evolution is a true soft copy photogrammetric workstation. It's analogous to and extends way beyond any of the old Analytica machines that were hardware platform with stages, diapositives, and so forth. This takes all of that technology and makes it more betterer overall.
More better. Let me write that
More
one down. I'm going to
betterer,
use that one. There were a few additional questions from that same asker, and I'm going to suggest that Steve, I'm going to send you that person's contact information, and that conversation can happen offline rather than taking any more of your time during the presentation.
I'm sorry if I'm not, directly hitting it, but yeah, let's take it offline, and then we'll get that cleared up as to what we're actually doing here. But yeah, Summit is a soft copy photogrammetry workstation, and we're just using 3D to capture all three axes. So, yeah, that's just a short demo on how Summit and Global Mapper are working together. You have all of the editing tools available to you over here on the Global Mapper side. If you wanted to work within that, you would use your system mouse to start using any of the edit tools there from there. If you wanted to go in and start editing some of the vectors that you were collecting immediately, or you stay in the Summit environment and access the editing tools through there. Other software systems have a problem when you're using the local tools, what we call the local tools that are embedded within the CAD system itself, where they're working off of pixel coordinates rather than ground coordinates. And so you get a mismatch in precision there. I don't believe that's the case with Global Mapper at all. So you've got access to all the tools within Global Mapper as you're digitizing along as well.
Question, Steve, on actually, there's a couple came in. The imagery, the source of the imagery, where do you get imagery? Where does that imagery come from? I guess maybe that's a good segue.
Yeah, imagery is dependent on the client, basically. So I'd have a city, county, state that wants to do update mapping of, say, let's say we're talking about a state or a national transportation agency, and they want to update a corridor for a new road that they want to put through. So they would contract to have it flown to a certain specification, certain elevation above ground for a certain scale output imagery, so that it would meet the precision and accuracy requirements that they're looking for. And they would put out a contract for that flight to happen, and an aircraft would come along, fly that corridor according to set standards, national mapping standards or ASPRS kind of standards, something like that. And they would collect the data to meet the client's stated project requirements and deliver that imagery to the client. And then the client would either do the analytical area triangulation themselves or have that contracted as well, where there's a surveyed ground control data set that comes in that has unique, easily identifiable, readily recognized either targets or photo identifiable points throughout the project area that act as ground control. There's a surveyed value for each one of those points, an X, Y, and a Z. And you would read those survey points as part of the mapping process, or the triangulation process rather, and take in the airborne GPS and inertial measurement unit, if there's any to be had there, information to come up with a highly refined and accurate position for every photo in the project, and the position at the orientation or the attitude of every image in that same project. And the orientation being the tip of the nose of the aircraft, the dip of the wings of the aircraft, and the yaw, or where the aircraft was pointing at the moment it took the picture. So that's omega phi kappa, or tip, tilt, and yaw. And we need to know that information in order to be able to display the images properly on screen, bring them up as a stereo model, and then accurately map. So that's analytical aero triangulation in a real small nutshell. And that imagery and the triangulation would then be delivered to the production house or to the client if they're doing the production, or to the transportation agency that has their own production shop. And they would load these images up, bring in the analytical triangulation data, set up the project, and bring it into Summit Evolution and Global Mapper, fire them both up, and start mapping from there. So the imagery can be from a drone The drones have gotten a lot better. The AGPS for drones has improved. The IMUs for drones have improved tremendously. So you can actually get pretty decent data out of a UAV now, but it has some limitations, and there's a lot of rules that have to be followed to maintain a photogrammetric workflow and to guarantee accuracy. So you have to pay attention to the details to make sure that you're getting the product out that you need to meet the accuracy requirements for the client. So satellite, drones, terrestrial. You have a camera and you set it up on a tripod, you take a picture of the face of a building, you move it over 6 feet, take another picture, you've got a stereo model. Now all we have to do is have control across the face of that building, and you could shoot that in with the total station or something like that, where you have the X, Y, and Z of that face of that building and the ground in front of it. We can make a stereo model out of that. And from that, you can map that building. You could do everything that's necessary to get the facade of the building and do whatever it is they're going to do. Demolish it, enhance it, restore it, something. So terrestrial, overhead, satellite, drone, airplane. We like imagery from everything. It's easy to get imagery. It's the details that go with it that make all the difference in the world. And that'd be the survey control, the camera calibration report. We need to know about the camera. And what's the focal length? What's the distortion of the lens? What's the altitude? Because we can compensate for the air column that the camera was looking through for refraction of light rays through that. The curvature of the Earth. All of that we like to know about the camera and the sensing system so that we can mathematically counteract it or accommodate that and improve the precision and accuracy of the mapping. So did that adequately answer the question?
That was a very long answer to a short question. Yeah, very thorough indeed. Yes, so yeah,
Right.
multiple ways of getting imagery. Steve, while I have you there, and I know we're going to run out of time here pretty quickly, someone's asking cost, inevitably. There was actually a couple. As a question came in a little bit earlier. Another one just was asked about the cost of Summit Evolution. I don't know if you're in a position where you can share that now, or again, that could be taken offline if you prefer.
There's so many variables that go into that. Are you currently using a competing software system? We discount for moving you over to Summit. Do you need multiple licenses? We discount for multiple licenses. That'd be a question I'd rather take offline and just see what their particular situation is. It's reasonable. It's we try to keep the tools within reach for everyone. But as far as setting a hard price, there's so many variables that go into that to come up with the final price on a project. I'd rather hold off on that and just take that offline if that's okay.
Yeah, and is a trial available? Is it possible to evaluate that?
Oh yeah, we love demos.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're interested in a demo, you just contact us at sales@datum.com and fill out who you are and what you'd like to have, and we provide a demo license, a soft copy license. Or a soft lock rather. And what would happen is we'd send you a fingerprint generator. You'd run that on the machine that you want to install Summit on, and it has to be that machine. You can't run it on one and then install on another. It just won't work. This takes a snapshot of the destination machine. Then we send you an install package and a soft lock license, and you're able to install the software for 30 or 45 days, depending on what you need, and use it to your heart's content. And it's a fully enabled, ready to go, complete Summit Evolution install. And that would include the capture for whatever CAD system you say you have at the time. So that's, yes, definitely, we do demos.
Excellent.
Happy to do them. It's all well and good what we're talking about, stereo models and so forth, and precision and accuracy and airborne sensors. Things change, and they've been changing a lot lately, and that's mainly been in the UAV market. And there's been just a huge expansion of capability with UAVs and software capabilities. And so we've kind of, modified Summit to go along with it as we have. And an example of that is the image that's on screen right now. This is a place over not too far out of Stuttgart, Germany. And this is composed of 326 different images from a drone that was post-processed, ortho-rectified, and then mosaicked and output to this image. And it also generated through image autocorrelation a point cloud. And that's what was used to orthorectify. That formed the terrain model for doing the orthorectification. And now we're down to one image. This is just a single image that I brought up into a Summit window. And there's not a lot you can do with it because you have, well, there's quite a bit you can do with it. I'm misleading there. You can do XY mapping very easily from an ortho. If you put the point cloud behind it, which we can do in Summit very easily, you can map in 3D by draping a string over that surface, basically. As you're digitizing, you're basically terrain following and using that underlying Z data. We took it a little bit further, and what we did is we created a stereo mate where you shift the ortho photo according to the elevation of each pixel. So we look at the elevation model behind, we look at the pixel location, and then we say, well, okay, we're going to shift it this far in the Y direction, the up and down, not the left and right, but the up and down direction on the screen. And that creates a second image that can be used in correspondence with the ortho to see in 3D. And then you, instead of just doing terrain following, you're actually mapping in 3D from an ortho and its stereo mate. So, and this is data that can be generated from the pixels to points module in Global Mapper as an input to Summit, and it works extremely well for that. So what we do is we just point to where the image is, the mosaic, we point to the digital surface model, tell it how we want it to shift, hit generate, and 9 minutes later for this, and with the new terrain project software development, it's even faster still. It creates, and again, if you've got the glasses on, a 3D stereo model. It's basically, I think I understand the nature of that other question. This isn't a 3D model. This isn't something that looks like a wireframe. This is just two images that are being displayed together that can be moved in relationship to each other to float the cursor down or float it up to the top of a system. I think I'm understanding the question that was asked previously about photogrammetric versus 3D modeling. It just clicked.
I think that is correct. I think that was the question, because they did specify a model. What's the difference? So again, I'm assuming we can take that conversation offline.
Sure.
We have overshot the top of the hour by just a little bit. I know some of you are probably on a schedule and have to leave. Steve, I don't know if you've got any more information that you want to share.
I had just a quick movie that showed the exact same thing being done with the stereo mate, just to show that the same tools in Global Mapper can be used from a stereo mate input. And, you know, there's basically no difference from what we were looking at previously. It's just a different kind of input. So just some caveats for stereo mates. Really efficient compilation. Instead of setting 325 models over a project area, you're dealing with just one stereo model set. Increased production efficiency. It's a way to manage and exploit large amounts of UAV data. Instead of dealing with thousands of imagery, you can be dealing with just 2 or 3 orthos and their companion stereo mates. Great for site assessment or emergency operations. The accuracy is dependent on the goodness of the inputs. So if you're trying to get down to 2 inches accuracy, you're probably not going to hit it with a surface model from a drone. That surface model would have to be cleaned up quite a bit to get to really tight accuracy. If you got really precise mapping, then you're going to have to get back into stereo models in Summit Evolution with a rigorous orientation. Yeah, sorry if I went long and I'm a little wordy, but basically, that's it for me. The contact information's up top. We're at datum.com, support@datum.com, or sales@datum.com. And thank you again so much for allowing us to join in today.
You're welcome. I'll leave this slide up for a second if you're grabbing a pen, just to jot down the contact information before we kind of wrap up on my end. One thing to note here, the idea of a trial, we had a few questions at the start. Obviously, we took this from the perspective of Global Mappers SDK, kind of high level, before we looked at the specific example from Datum. But the SDK also has a trial. Those of you who might be interested in taking a look at this, if it works in the context of maybe a project that you're working on, you absolutely can initiate a trial of the SDK as well. Again, get in touch with us if that's something of interest to you. I'll go ahead and switch off now. Hopefully you've had a chance to note these. If you're watching the recording, by the way, this contact information will also be at the bottom of the screen. Let me bring up my screen one last time. Again, Steve, you thanked us. Let me extend a word of thanks to you folks for showing us a different view of Global Mapper. I mean, I use the software every day, as many of our audience do as well. This showed it from a completely different perspective. It showed us how the engine can be used in a very creative way. So really appreciate you taking the time, Steve, and appreciate the folks at Datum giving us a showcase of how the SDK works. I know there's a few of your colleagues are in the audience here today as well, so I really appreciate the work that you folks are doing. From the Blue Marble perspective, if you have questions about the SDK, I've got a few emails on here. GeoHelp is probably the best one to get information about the SDK. So go ahead and shoot an email to our tech team. Just to mention that you watched this presentation, you want some more information on the SDK. Chances are they will forward your message to one of our developers, and they can talk shop with you in more detail about how that would work, and again, set you up with a trial. If you're completely new to Global Mapper and completely new to the platform, this was an interesting one for you to start off with, where we get into looking at the SDK, but you can go to our website, you can grab a copy of the software and see how that works in the interface. We will be back in, well, just a few weeks for our academic presentation. I mentioned that at the start. I do encourage you, we've already had a few questions come in today about Global Mapper Pro. If you're interested in Pro, about a month from now, we'll be starting to roll that one out. We'll be having a quick Q&A session. Bring your questions. We'll answer those questions. We'll answer a few more as well. We'll hopefully straighten things up as far as that platform is concerned. Once again, thank you so much, Steve. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate it.
And folks, we will see you next time. Have a great day.